For most of the history of civilization, waterways dictated whether a society would rise or fall. Great nations, known as hydraulic civilizations, arose among the rivers, like the Nile in Egypt, the Tigris-Euphrates in Mesopotamia, the Indus in India, the Yellow River in China, and so forth. The silt from the rivers not only helped crop yields, but also acted as ancient highways to transport surpluses and build trade routes. This changed with the domestication of the horse in Central Asia by Indo-European tribes. For the first time, trade didn't have to be restricted to waterways. Horses opened up millions of square miles of new traffic. Eventually, there emerged the Silk Road, stretching from Anatolia to China. According to Wikipedia, the Silk Road was a network of Eurasian trade routes active from the 2nd century BCE until the 15th century, spanning over 6,400 kilometers, 4,000 miles. It played a central role in facilitating economic, cultural, political, and religious interactions between the East and West. For thousands of years, the Silk Road held sway, with great wealth being transferred between Europeans and Asians. This started to fragment and fall apart with the rise of Islam. Suddenly, Christian merchants were robbed and beheaded. Christopher Columbus could no longer follow in the footsteps of his hero Marco Polo in his journeys to the East. Columbus, to evade the Muslims, decided on a maritime trade route west and accidentally discovered the Americas. For the first time in thousands of years, geopolitical power shifted from Central Asia to the Atlantic Ocean as vast new opportunities for wealth opened up in the New World. For the last 500 years, this was true. Europe emerged from being a backwater to being the center of the world. This may be being challenged now, as China wants to rebuild the old Silk Road. If this is allowed to happen, then power will shift from the Atlantic to Central Asia, where 4/5 of global population lives. Recently, according to Brazilian journalist Pepe Escobar, the president of Iran had been on a trip to China. He writes, "The key takeaway of President Ebrahim Raisi's state visit to Beijing goes way beyond the signing of 20 bilateral cooperation agreements. This is a crucial inflection point in an absorbing, complex, decades-long ongoing historical process, Eurasia integration." Little wonder that President Raisi, welcomed by a standing ovation at Peking University before receiving an honorary academic title, stressed a new world order is forming and taking the place of the older one, characterized by real multilateralism, maximum synergy, solidarity, and dissociation from unilateralisms. To stop Eurasia from happening, the Biden administration is waging economic warfare against China. One of the most recent steps they took is cutting off equipment to China to build microchips. This will cripple their status as a manufacturing center. Biden just made the news for getting the Netherlands and Japan to go along with it. The Wall Street Journal reports, Japan and the Netherlands have agreed with the U.S. to start restricting exports of advanced chip manufacturing equipment to China, joining efforts by the Biden administration to slow China's military development by cutting access to advanced technologies. The Netherlands in particular leads the world in chip-making technology, so they may have an interested motive in the embargo, as can be seen here in the video about Dutch chip manufacturer ASML.
For a while, ASML was just one small player in a large market of equipment makers. Then something miraculous happened for the company. You see, computer chips have become a lot more complicated to make over the last 60 years, so not every company can do it. A computer is mostly made of things called transistors, and they used to be about 1 centimeter in length, or about the same size as a pea. But over the course of the last 6 decades, transistors got smaller and smaller, which made computers more efficient every single year. That's actually where the term Moore's Law comes from. Essentially, our computing power has grown so quick only because we have been able to make transistors smaller. But anyways, researchers from the United States Department of Energy noticed in the late 1990s that eventually Moore's Law would stop, because we couldn't make chips any smaller. Therefore, computing power would stop getting better over time. And this was a pretty big problem. So the researchers at the Department of Energy got to work, and eventually they discovered a new way to make computer chips called extreme ultraviolet lithography. Essentially, it was an extremely complicated and theoretical way to make a computer chip, but on paper it seemed to work. And strangely enough, only one company checked all the boxes for licensing, creating, testing, and building this new technology. And that company was ASML. So from the early 2000s until 2018, ASML kept refining and perfecting this technology. And then a breakthrough happened in 2018. ASML successfully produced the best computer chip making machine in the world by a landslide, Remember how transistors used to be 1 centimeter in length in the 1960s? Well, now ASML makes them at 3 nanometers, about the same size as a strand of DNA. This invention put ASML so far ahead of its competition that some experts have suggested that the next closest competitor is about 5 years behind ASML, but most of its competitors are actually 10 years behind.
Long story short, in the Netherlands joining with the US to put an embargo on China, they're placing them about 10 years behind in terms of microchips. China isn't without leverage though. Not only is the Netherlands the center of chip-making technology, but Rotterdam is the world's second largest port outside of Asia. China is striking back by putting pressure on the Dutch to stop being a client state of the US, by threatening them regarding being a hub on the new Silk Road. Because Rotterdam will be a key hub on the trade route's western flank. If they don't play ball, China may cut them off. So in a weird way, the Netherlands is a pivot point between two great powers, the United States on one side and China on the other. Whatever happens, the important point is, what we're watching is the inevitable death of the unipolar world. Globalism is starting to fall apart, and nation-states are beginning to jockey again for power. The mainstream media isn't drawing too much attention to this, but make no mistake, this is one of the big stories of the year. When the news leaves a bad taste in your mouth, luckily, there's the Daniel Natal Pez dispenser. It gives out only red pills, as does the New American Magazine. Get your subscription today.